The world of Danganronpa is famous for a lot of things. Some of these include murders, a monochrome bear, waifus, and a guy with a huge sister complex. We aren't here to look at any of those though. We are here today to look at Danganronpa's executions, and more specifically, the ones that I think are the best of them all. But I want to clarify something before we start, because rating people dying doesn't really sound good on paper. So the higher number the execution is means that it just left some sort of emotional impact on me rather than just thinking, oh, this one looks the coolest, so it's at number 2 or 1. With that all out of the way, let's get started. To be honest, this spot on the list was the hardest to determine, but I ultimately came to the conclusion that it belongs to Mondo Owada and his motorcycle death cage, or the cage of death in English. Mondo grew on me in the mere 2 chapters he was alive during the events of Trigger Happy Havoc. He made mistakes sometimes, yeah, sure, but he wanted to learn from them and become a better man, not only for himself, but for his brother's legacy. This was also really evident when he was found out during the second class trial. He didn't try to combat it at all when all the evidence ultimately pointed to him. He had accepted his fault and he was ready to go and be slaughtered. What also hurt is that Mondo was reminded directly of a memory that caused the person he trusted and cared for most in his life to vanish into thin air. That would screw someone up mentally for a long time, especially if you were the one blaming yourself for it. While watching Mondo spinning around during his execution wasn't particularly bad for me, watching Monokuma start using the Mondo butter just sent some chills down my spine. Poor Gonta. Gonta was only trying to help classmates. Gonta would never hurt anyone. Those were words that Gonta would stand by, until he got manipulated by Kokichi Oma to kill Miyu Iruma, so that Kokichi wouldn't die to Miyu's plan. Gonta spends the entire class trial being confused and sad due to him not correctly inputting the cords into the headset of where the murder occurred, the virtual world. Seeing Gonta get confused by Kokichi in the class trial and watching the effect it had on Gonta was absolutely heartbreaking for me to watch. All of me truly believed that Gonta could not have been the murderer, but alas, the truth stung me more than I wanted to let it. This class trial even brought me to tears. While the events leading up to Gonta's execution were absolutely tragic, watching the execution didn't leave me as empty as the other 3 on the list. I did not enjoy watching Gonta have to be the victim of a bunch of small robotic bugs being shot at him, and I certainly disliked when a giant robot bug pierced through his stomach. But it wasn't the worst one I've seen. I'm sorry, Gonta. You suffered dearly, but not quite enough. My first real taste of how cruel and unforgiving the Danganronpa franchise is. It all began when I watched Leon Kuwata being dragged away from his classmates, strung up to a pole, and had baseballs launched at him from every single angle. For this, I didn't think the murdering would be that gruesome or horrifying, especially given the game's rating. Oh, how horribly wrong I was. This was not only a harsh reality lesson for the cast of Trigger Happy Havoc, but for me too. Watching his gruesome death wasn't enough, because just before he died, I had to listen to his grief, as a result of being identified as the killer. I'm certain Leon didn't want this as the outcome, but he, along with most of the others, were absolutely frightened by the killing school life. The hopelessness of not knowing what to do when your life is in danger got to Leon, and you could really see that during his final moments. Leon's death did exactly what Junko Enoshima wanted. It inflicted despair onto everyone, and got the ball rolling.
Danganronpa.
Nagito Komaeda will have to face the wrath of Resident Unleashed. That of course would be the case if the events of Danganronpa were actually real. But that is how I felt at the end of Chiaki Nanami's execution. I was so passionately angry at a video game, and I hadn't had an emotion like that while I was playing a video game in a while. Chiaki's execution was the result of Nagito's carefully planned suicide, in which he used his talent as the ultimate lucky student to have Chiaki randomly poison him, as his goal was to save her and have her win the next trial, as the Blackened, and be set free from Jabberwock Island. What a terrible plan that was. He believed the traitor wasn't a part of the remnants of despair. The unfortunate truth was the real Chiaki was already dead and didn't have time to become a part of despair. The thing that got me the most about all of this was seeing one of my favorite characters in Danganronpa 2 willingly give themselves up for the cause of the others. I didn't want Chiaki to die, and I was really pissed off at Nagito for making it that way. Another thing that gets me too is her actual execution. While Chiaki was willing to go through it, she is seen running for her life in hopes that she can manage to somehow survive the execution. She still believed in hope until the bitter end, and wanted to see everyone make it out, but was thwarted by Nagito being absolutely crazy. Nagito wanted hope, but he only plagued my heart with despair.
Danganronpa.
This execution left me the most confused out of every single execution in the series. I thought to myself, how could I, the player, be left in the dark about the actions of the character that I was controlling? I felt betrayed and hurt. This execution did exactly what the developers intended it to. It tore me to absolute shreds. Kaede was depicted as the symbol of hope, and was really aiming to get everyone out of the killing game. I put too much blind faith in the protag can't die, and I ultimately got executed myself for it. Especially after she was depicted as a symbol of hope. I really thought she wouldn't die. This left an impact on me already, and one that I had to carry with me for the rest of the game. But it only got worse. In Chapter 6, Kaede was revealed to not have actually murdered anyone, and this made me absolutely furious. It made me realize the execution she suffered was all for nothing, and that she still could be standing right by Shuichi if not for Tsumugi's interference. I can never forget watching her being strangled to death, then on top of that, being crushed so her blood would splatter everywhere. Not only that, she died by the thing she loved so much, which was playing the piano. It was an inhumane sight to see and ultimately left the most impact on me out of all the executions throughout the entire series. Those were my top 5 Danganronpa executions. Being reminded of how hurt I was during these executions wasn't the greatest thing in the world. But it was worth it because I was able to reflect on how big of an impact these had on me personally. I would also like to read about what made you guys squirm in your seat or made you heartbroken in the Danganronpa franchise by letting me know which executions were painful for you, all in the comments section down below. I'm Resin Unleashed. I'm heartbroken, but still doing my best to seem cool and collected for everyone. And I will catch up with you guys next time. See ya.